What happens when the self-proclaimed party of law and order declares war on law enforcement itself? In a political landscape saturated with rhetoric, true conviction is often measured not by what is said, but by the glaring chasm between words and actions. We are about to witness a methodical dissection of this very hypocrisy, a masterclass in legislative questioning where every word is a carefully placed scalpel. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a licensed gun owner herself, steps into the arena not just to question a witness, but to put an entire political ideology on trial. She begins by meticulously correcting the record on a case that has inflamed the nation before pivoting to expose a stunning contradiction at the heart of the gun debate. Using data as her shield and relentless logic as her sword, she builds a case, brick by brick, against colleagues she accuses of undermining the very safety they claim to champion. The question is no longer just about policy, but about principle. How can a party support law enforcement while simultaneously moving to abolish one of its key agencies?
Back and forth regarding Breonna Taylor. First of all, I do appreciate you being here and your answering of the questions. You know, I do want to make sure that before we go down this road, I clarify some things that were different in the Breonna Taylor case. Number one, the officers were considered to have botched what took place on that day because they fired blindly into a home, meaning that they initiated some sort of deadly force, and the only information that they had was allegedly that this was the place of some sort of drug activity. At that point in time, you ended up having her boyfriend, who returned fire, believing that someone was breaking in. It is very different when you are returning fire versus initiating fire, and there was no need to do so. In addition to that, no-knock warrants and knock warrants are basically a couple of seconds of difference, if I'm going to be honest. But one of the things that I worked on in the state legislature was actually making sure that we could reform no-knock warrants because it is a risk not only to the people in the homes, especially in a state like Texas, where everyone is allowed to have a gun, but it's also a huge risk to law enforcement. So being able to do this effectively, this is dangerous work that law enforcement engage in every single day. And I do want to be clear that I am always sorry for the loss of life. I don't care about the race. I don't care about any of those things. And honestly, I believe in the criminal justice system. I believe that if someone is accused of something, they should have their day in court. So I do want to say that I take issue with anyone losing their life, period, even if it's somebody that's accused of a crime. And I believe that they should go through due process and have an opportunity. But in this particular set of circumstances, we know that if somebody shoots at me, in fact, some would argue that last week I had a colleague that decided she wanted to shoot at me, I'm going to shoot back. And that's what happened here. But what's more frustrating for me in this hearing, and what seems to be a pattern, is that we continue to attempt to litigate pending cases. We saw that we had one of the witnesses in the Trump trial. He came and testified before us last week, and then he went and testified this week in front of the judiciary. And then we know that this is still a pending case, and I do want to afford an opportunity for those that will be granted access to discovery, video, whatever video doesn't exist, as well as any statements, depositions, all those things. Some folk that have access to all the information, and ultimately, if this needs to go to court, having a jury that will make a decision based upon the facts and the evidence. So with that, I want to make sure that we move on to something else, which is the reality that, in fact, let me do this before I run out of time. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 97% annual gun owner October 2023 report, which details these and other statistics pertaining to gun owners' views on common sense gun control policies, and I'm gonna go back up to what those views are. Thank you so much. 97%, a bipartisan group of gun owners and non-gun owners, which conducts research on gun safety policies, found that with regard to common sense gun policies, 86% of gun owners, well over the simple majority, support keeping guns out of the hands of violent criminals. 70% of gun owners said they wish we would enact some kind of gun reform. 66% of gun owners, for instance, think guns should be restricted on school grounds, and 67% think that they should be restricted in government buildings. And I will tell you that I fall into those categories because I am a licensed gun owner. Yet despite the majority of Americans and the majority of gun owners, Republicans last week passed a bill out of the House that eliminates states' ability to regulate firearms on private property, government buildings, playgrounds, and gun-free school zones. If that's not hypocrisy, I honestly don't know what it is, and it doesn't end there. As a party self-proclaiming itself as law enforcement's biggest advocate and supporter, Republicans on this very committee have introduced legislation to abolish the law enforcement agency entirely. Ms. Sampson, I have a few yes or no questions. I may only get to one. Yes or no, are you familiar with the role of ATF?
Yes.
And to your understanding, the ATF is in fact law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
Does ATF's duties include preventing incidents, investigating cases, and recommending prosecution for issues of violent crimes and weapons for gangs and career criminals?
Yes.
Narcotic traffickers?
Yes.
Domestic and international arms traffickers?
Yes.
Armed human traffickers?
Yes.
Terrorists?
Yes.
And with that, I will yield.
Representative Jasmine Crockett's performance in this hearing was not a simple inquiry. It was a calculated and devastatingly effective prosecution of political hypocrisy, executed with the precision of a seasoned trial lawyer. Her strategy was not to uncover new information from the witness, Amy Sampson, but to use the witness as a final, confirming punctuation mark on a meticulously constructed argument aimed squarely at her Republican colleagues. The central thesis she masterfully established was the profound contradiction between the Republican Party's self-proclaimed status as the champion of law and order and their legislative actions that actively undermine law, enforcement, and public safety. Crockett's questioning unfolded in three distinct, tactical phases. First, she seized control of the narrative by authoritatively clarifying the facts of the Breonna Taylor case, dismantling any false equivalencies, and establishing her command of the details. This initial move served to frame her as a credible, fact-based interrogator. The second phase saw her pivot from a specific case to a broader policy debate, where she strategically introduced hard evidence. By asking for unanimous consent to enter the October 2023 gun owner report into the record, she wasn't just stating an opinion, she was building a foundation of objective truth, citing specific statistics that revealed an overwhelming majority of gun owners, her own demographic, support common-sense gun safety reforms. This was the logical cornerstone of her argument, demonstrating that the Republican legislative agenda was starkly out of step not only with the general public, but with their own base. The final phase was a brilliant display of prosecutorial technique. Her accusation of hypocrisy was direct and powerful, contrasting the data she just presented with a House bill that strips away firearm regulations. The climax of her performance was the rapid-fire yes or no questioning directed at Ms. Sampson. This was not a conversation. It was a controlled demolition. By forcing the witness to affirm, repeatedly, that the ATF, the very agency Republicans have targeted for abolition, is a law enforcement body that investigates violent crimes, gangs, terrorists, and traffickers, Crockett exposed the absurdity of her opponent's position. Each yes from the witness was another nail in the coffin of their narrative. Crockett's demeanor remained unflinchingly composed and assertive throughout. Her tone was not hysterical or aggressive, but rather measured, deliberate, and imbued with an unshakable confidence that comes from wielding facts. This calm intensity made her arguments resonate more deeply, projecting an aura of authority and control. She did not allow for interruptions or deviations, masterfully managing her limited time to build an airtight case. In essence, Jasmine Crockett transformed a congressional hearing into a public courtroom, trying the case of political inconsistency. She successfully painted a picture of a party whose actions betray their words, a party willing to sacrifice the safety of communities and the efficacy of law enforcement to serve a rigid political ideology. The questioning of Amy Sampson was merely the final act, a compelled confession from a neutral party that the emperor indeed has no clothes. What do you think of this strategy? Is this effective political discourse or just partisan theater? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more in-depth analysis.